My name is Ethan Cole, and I am 32 years old. I live in Silverpine Valley, a quiet little mountain town nestled deep in the pine forests of the Pacific Northwest, where the air smells like cedar and snow lingers on the north-facing slopes well into May. It is the kind of place where people know your name at the gas station and wave at you from their porches, but still keep their rifles loaded and front doors locked at night. People come here for solitude, fresh air, and freedom from the noise of big cities. I came here for a fresh start after everything that happened back in the city, and to build something real with my own two hands. I started a small construction company called Cole Timber Works. We specialize in custom log homes, decks, barns, and mountain cabins. Most of my clients want everything to look rustic and authentic, so we use locally sourced timber, hand-hewn beams, and traditional craftsmanship. It is hard work, brutal some days, but I love it. Every beam I lay, every nail I hammer feels like I am stitching my life back together piece by piece. Before this, I worked in commercial real estate in Portland. It paid well, but it ate my soul. I wore suits, I lied to clients, I bent rules. And in the end, I got burned by someone I trusted more than anyone, my best friend and business partner, Jason Reeves. He was the one who ruined me. We started Landmark Properties together right out of college. We were inseparable in those early years, two hungry kids from broken homes who clawed our way up from nothing. We stayed in motels between deals, slept under desks during closings, and ate ramen like it was gourmet food. When we finally got our first big win, a rehab project in downtown, we celebrated like we won the lottery. We bought matching leather jackets, had our names stitched on the inside, and promised each other we would never forget where we came from. But somewhere along the way, Jason forgot. He started dating this woman named Vanessa. She was sleek and sharp, dressed like a magazine and talked like she owned the room. She worked in corporate law and had connections. Jason started dressing differently, spending more time at fancy restaurants and less time on job sites. He began making calls without me signing off on deals behind my back. And when I confronted him, he told me I was holding him back. I was too cautious, too stuck in the past. I needed to evolve or get out. He said those exact words, evolve or get out, like I was some outdated software. So I got out. I sold my shares cheap just to get free of him, and he took full control of Landmark Properties within a year. He flipped the company for $6.2 million and vanished into the elite circles of Portland society. Meanwhile, I was left with nothing but a check that barely covered my debts and a broken sense of trust. I disappeared up here to Silverpine Valley, sold everything I owned, and started over from scratch. No phone, no internet for months, just me, a chainsaw, and a dream to build with my hands again. That was 5 years ago. For a while it worked. I got strong, I got quiet, I got peaceful. I married a woman named Claire. She worked at the local clinic as a nurse. She was soft, where I had become hard patient, where I had become impatient. She believed in me when I did not believe in myself. We had plans to have kids someday, maybe open a little guest lodge near the creek. But then last winter, everything changed. Claire got sick. It started with fatigue, headaches, then blurred vision. The doctors in Silverpine could not figure it out, so we drove 2 hours to the regional hospital. They ran tests, scans, blood work, and finally delivered the news. It was a rare neurological condition affecting her optic nerve. There was a treatment, but it was not covered by insurance. It cost $87,000 up front, no payment plans, no appeals. It had to be done within 6 months, or she could go blind permanently. I felt the world tilt beneath me. $87,000. I did not have that much money. Even with my business doing well and saving every dollar, I was barely at $40,000. I begged the doctors for time. I offered to work for them. I even considered selling the company. But there were no buyers in a town. This small Claire tried to be strong. She told me not to worry, that she would find a way to live with it. But I saw the fear in her eyes when she looked at our photos on the wall, the ones where she could still see clearly. I made a promise that night on our porch under the stars. I told her I would not let her go blind. I would move heaven and earth if I had to. That is when I started taking every job, no matter how small, how far, or how cold. I worked 12-hour days through snowstorms. I took on extra laborers and bid low just to win contracts. I was desperate, and it showed. My work began to suffer a little. Corners got cut, a railing here, a support beam there. Nothing dangerous, but not my best. I could feel it like a stain on my reputation. Then one day a lead came in through the local hardware store. Old man Haggerty said a wealthy guy was looking to rebuild a fire-damaged guest house on the North Ridge. I grabbed the address and drove up the mountain road. It was a 7-mile winding trail that dead-ended at a massive timber estate hidden behind iron gates and dense pines. Sat a modern rustic mansion, all glass and logs with solar panels, and a private helipad. I knocked on the door, and when it opened, my blood turned to ice. There stood Jason Reeves, same slick smile, same expensive watch. He used to wear the same cologne that always made Claire wrinkle her nose. He did not recognize me at first, not with my beard, my work boots, and the scars on my hands from years of saws and nails. But I knew him instantly. I felt my fists tighten. I wanted to shove him into the wall and scream, "What did you do to me? What did you do to my life?" But instead I smiled and introduced myself as Ethan from Cole Timber Works. He invited me in casually like we were old colleagues catching up, and said he needed the guest house rebuilt exactly as it was, but with upgraded materials, fire-resistant everything. I walked through the burned remains, the blackened beams, the shattered windows, and did the calculations in my head. The job should cost about $52,000, give or take 10%. But then I thought of Claire. I thought of that number 87,000. I thought of all the nights I cried alone in the workshop, wondering if I would ever be enough to save her. That is when I decided I would not just charge him more, I would ruin him. I presented Jason with an estimate for $130,000. I listed fake costs, imported timber from Alaska, fire retardant treatments not on the market, yet labor surcharges for high-altitude work and emergency logistics permits. He raised an eyebrow, but did not argue. He said he had been over budget on several projects lately. But this place meant a lot to him. It was where he proposed to Vanessa. He signed the contract that day with a 10% deposit, wired directly to my account. That was $13,000, immediately more than I had in the bank in 2 years. I began the work immediately. And I did it right at first. Everything met code. Every beam was secured, every wire grounded. I wanted him to trust me completely. I invited him to visit the site weekly. I sent photos, updates, even brought him coffee. Once he started calling me Ethan, like we were friends again, like the past never happened, like he did not steal my life and walk away clean. I played the part. I laughed at his jokes, asked about Vanessa, showed concern. When he mentioned money problems, said, I knew how it was with overheads rising. He confided in me. Said the market was down, his new developments were delayed, investors pulling out. He had tied up most of his cash in land. He could not sell. He was stressed. I could see it in his eyes, the same flicker of anxiety I used to see before a big deal back in Portland. Only now he had no one to lean on. Vanessa had left him 6 months ago, walked out with a settlement and half his portfolio. He was alone now. He was the one struggling, and I was the one holding the hammer as the guest house neared completion. I began the second phase of my plan. I started charging him for phantom services. I sent invoices for overnight security guards who did not exist, for structural stress tests that were never conducted, for hazmat cleanup of asbestos that was not there. Each bill was $5,000 to $7,000. He paid them without question. I think he was too distracted, too deep in his own financial holes to notice. Then came the final invoice for $42,000, labeled Final Compliance Certification and Green Roof Installation. I had not installed any green roof. There was no certification needed. But I attached fake documents, forged signatures from a non-existent inspector, and even a QR code that led to a blank page so it looked real. He called me furious for the first time in months. I could hear the panic in his voice. He said he could not afford this top-off. I was bleeding him dry. I told him calmly that this was required by county code, that if he did not pay the entire amount, the building would be flagged as non-compliant, and he would not be able to use it during ski season, which was worth over 60 grand in rental income. He cursed, yelled, threatened to sue. I apologized and said I was just doing my job, following regulations. He paid the next day when the final wire cleared my bank. That made it $185,000 total from Jason Reeves. I sat in my truck for an hour just staring at the number. I had done it. I had more than doubled what I needed to save Claire. I drove straight to the hospital, paid the full amount in one payment. The doctors scheduled surgery for the following month. Claire cried. When I told her, she kept touching my face like she could not believe it was real. She said I was her hero, said she did not know how I did it, but I did not tell her the truth. I could not. I told her I got a lucky insurance payout from an old policy I did not know existed. She believed me, and that night we held each other like we had won the war. But then 2 weeks later, I got a call from the county inspector. He said there was a complaint about the guest house construction. A whistleblower had sent documents showing fraudulent charges, code violations, and forged certifications. The inspector wanted to meet me on site immediately. My heart dropped. I drove up the mountain in the snowstorm, my tires slipping on ice. When I got there, the inspector was waiting along with 2 county deputies. And Jason, he looked broken, pale, eyes red like he had not slept in days. He pointed at me and said, that is the man who stole from me. He said I had taken $185,000 through fraud, lies, and trickery. He had pulled my business records, bank transfers, even my original estimate from 5 years ago, showing I used to work in real estate. The inspector confirmed most of the work was up to code, but the fake charges were undeniable. I was arrested on site for felony fraud, grand larceny, and falsifying official documents. I spent 2 nights in the county jail. My name splashed across the local news. Coal Timber Works was shut down. My tools seized. My license suspended. Claire was humiliated. She stood by me. But I saw the doubt in her eyes. Did you do it? She asked me. She did not say it like she wanted to believe me. She said it like she needed to brace for the fall. I confessed. I told her everything about Jason, about the betrayal, about how I just wanted to save her. She held me and cried and said I was still her husband. But the law was the law. The trial was set for 3 months out. I could not afford a lawyer, so I represented myself. I studied every document, every law I could find. I knew I was guilty on paper. But I also knew the truth was more complicated than 2 weeks. Before trial, something strange happened. Jason vanished. His house was empty. His cars gone. His bank accounts were wiped clean. And his name was tied to a series of bad loans and shell companies that started collapsing one by one. The district attorney called me into his office and said the case against me was being dropped not because I was innocent, but because the victim had committed financial fraud on a massive scale. The IRS was investigating him for tax evasion, securities fraud, and misappropriation of investor funds. He had been using my project to launder money and inflate losses to claim deductions. I was stunned. I had ruined him. But he had already been ruined long before I got there. The charges against me were dismissed with prejudice. I walked out of that courthouse a free man, but not a clean one. I rebuilt my business slowly, this time with honesty and transparency. I still work with timber. I still love the smell of sawdust in the morning, but I do not take shortcuts. I do not cut corners. I make sure every nail is right because I know how fast everything can burn down. Claire recovered her sight fully, and last month we found out she is pregnant. We are going to have a son. I stand on our porch every night and look up at the stars and wonder if revenge is ever really over, or if it just circles back to teach you something about yourself. I do not hate Jason anymore. I pity him. He lost everything because he never learned what mattered. I lost everything too, but I got it back not because I took from someone else, but because I faced what I had done and kept going. That is the real revenge, not destroying your enemy, but becoming someone they could never understand. And here is the twist. Jason was found 3 weeks ago living in a storage unit in Boise under an alias. He had $50 to his name and a one-way ticket to nowhere. Last I heard, he was working at a gas station washing windshields for change. He sent me a letter through my lawyer. It was just one sentence. It said I deserved it. I did not write back. I did not need to. The mountains are quiet today. The pines sway in the wind, and my wife laughs inside as she puts a hand on her belly. I have everything I need, and that is the best revenge of all.